Coming up on this episode of the IoT Inc. Business Show.
Car manufacturers have been doing connected cars for a while yet. These guys said to us, look, if anybody else comes and asks us or tells us they have another killer app, we're going to kill them. What we want is a killer platform that can connect any type of device over any type of network. And I want the data to be treated consistently so that I can then do what I want to do with that data, whether it's perform analytics or do data enrichment, whatever it happens to be.
IoT platforms are commonly used to develop standalone IoT products, systems, or environments. But what do you do when you want to connect multiple IoT products? The outcome-based economy depends on it, and the key lies in using platforms of platforms or common data models. In this episode of the IoT Business Show, I speak with Nigel Upton about the importance of the horizontal data model when choosing your IoT platform.
All this and more on this episode of the IoT Inc. Business Show. The people, the business, and the technology of the next generation internet. This is the IoT Inc. Business Show. And now, here's your host, Bruce Sinclair.
Hello and welcome to the IoT Inc. Business Show. This show is made possible by sales of my book, IoT Inc., published by McGraw-Hill, and the IoT Inc. Certified IoT Professional, or ICIP, online training and certification program. Become a certified IoT professional by completing the program's 3 courses: ICIP Technology, ICIP Business, and ICIP Strategy and Digital Transformation. Details of which can be found at www.iot-inc.com. That's www.iot-inc.com. With me today on the IoT Business Show is Nigel Upton. Nigel is Director and General Manager of IoT Solutions at HP Enterprise. Nigel has led multiple businesses at HPE in telco, unified communications, alliances, and software development. I met Nigel at Internet of Things World when I was the MC, and I introduced him to his talk. I liked his presentation, so I thought I'd invite him in the show. Nigel, welcome.
Hey, Bruce. Thank you very much. A real pleasure to be here.
So what have you been working on lately in the IoT sphere of things?
Well, we've been busy rolling out our platform. We have HP Enterprise has quite a few assets in the world of IoT. We have a universal IoT platform, which is, if you like, the data side, the application enablement side that deals with the data. We have connectivity pieces where we have our own Wi-Fi connectivity solution through a company we acquired called Aruba. And their stuff's very clever. I mean, at that event, we were right next to the stadium for the 49ers. And in the stadium, they've deployed several thousand of these Aruba beacons. And that means that as you walk in the stadium, you launch the app. The app will guide you to your seat. If you want to order food, you can order it either from the app or you might want to go and get it. And then it'll guide you to the nearest stand or your favorite beverage, and it'll guide you there. So it's very, very good at putting in a dense amount of beacons and being able to guide you anywhere you want. And when you think about the Internet of Things, you can also start finding lots of things using this Aruba solution with the beacons to be able to do very accurate location of things using Wi-Fi.
Nice. And that's Levi Stadium that you're referring to?
I beg your pardon. I sometimes forget the acronyms because football to me means something else entirely. But
I didn't use football. I said Levi.
I know. I was just still suffering from the humility of England losing to Iceland. Anyway, so
well, we suffered our own humility here in California because if you follow basketball, our beloved Warriors lost as well.
I saw that, but I kind of didn't feel too bad about it. It was kind of like you guys won last year, and maybe it was their turn. They hadn't won for over 50 years, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway.
That is true.
So we also build platforms, and for us, the edge computing stuff is starting to get really interesting. So we've launched new edge computing devices, which we call the Edge line. We had already launched the EL10 and 20, which is low-end, limited amount of computing power, but fits certain use cases. And we now just announced much larger edge devices, the EL1000 and 4000, so much more computing power. And that's really good for where you can't send the data to the cloud. You're in environments where either there is no connectivity, so think about oil platforms, or or the production side of energy. You're in oil fields, or out in some place drilling or extracting things in the middle of the Australian outback, but you don't have a connection, so you can't really start sending data into the cloud to perform analytics or anything else. So instead, you do that closer and closer to where the thing is for the Internet of Things, and you're needing more and more computational horsepower to be able to do the data crunching and perform the analytics almost in real time.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense for IT, companies coming from IT, obviously.
Yeah.
But there's two sides to that network, and really you've got the OT side too, and bringing the two of them together, both the IT and the OT, into that fog layer that you're kind of talking about is kind of one of the holy grails. Are you looking at operational technology and as well as on the IT side?
Well, we see that as a partnership because our expertise is really from the consumer side coming through to the enterprise, and the operational side it's different. I mean, being able to look at a locomotive upside down, having sensors being placed on it, or a jet aircraft engine where the sensors go, that's not our business. I mean, the GEs and the Siemens and the ABBs and the Schneider Electric, those companies know that stuff so well. So we just...
So you're picking it up then right at the seam there, right?
Absolutely.
Where the OT, IT seam
Absolutely.
is?
We join with them. I mean, we do a number of things with them. So we announced a partnership with GE with the Predix platform, depending on your pronunciation. So we announced that a couple of weeks ago. We will announce a whole bunch more, and we will partner with those guys in a couple of ways. One is they need a compute platform. And so we partner with them providing the infrastructure, the EL1000, EL4000, that type of thing. And the second is that we bridge the gap where IT meets OT. So we are very comfortable on the enterprise and the consumer space. We know what we're doing there, but it's having the partnership that allows our systems to interact with their systems. And this is something we know how to do as well. So it's something that inevitably is going to happen. And as we get those two systems to talk to each other, then you start being able to digitize the whole value chain from the consumer. If you look at energy, from the gas meter through to the management of the energy, all the way back to the production of the energy. So that way you digitize everything, which is, I believe, what we're after.
No, that's right. And, the communication part that you're talking about is complicated because you're talking protocols. But is HP going to provide gateways, hardware for gateways? That's what they call it, right? On the OT side, they're gateways. On the IT side, we've got routers, we've got switches, we've got whatever. But will HPE, I'll use the E, but will HPE also be providing hardware on the OT side, or again, strictly from the IT side up?
So we will be providing the platforms, the compute platforms.
Okay.
This is the EL1000, EL4000. So the compute platforms for the OT to do more and more processing at the edge.
Yep. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought you meant. I just didn't know what the acronyms meant, and it's good to explain it.
Yeah, sorry if it appeared a bit foggy. But anyway, sorry, I just couldn't resist getting that in there.
Starting, everybody. They're ready for it. Nigel, we started with dead fish. Now we got the fog joke. Nigel, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in IoT.
Yeah, a little about myself. I joined HP a long time ago. Years and years, when child labor was still legal. And because I was brought up in what used to be Rhodesia back in the day, turned into Zimbabwe, and I've lived in the UK and Germany and the US, and I started on the IoT side about 5 years ago when I was asked within HP to form an M2M task force. And right then, back in the day, we were dealing primarily with smart meters when they were being rolled out. I've been involved that long, and then I left HP, did some work in startups with drones, and again, it's more the same stuff. It's Internet of Things, and then I decided I actually had to go back and get a job that actually paid you, so I rejoined HP. But the industry of IoT obviously has been around for a long time, with RFID tags and
under different names. Right?
Exactly, but finally we have a cool name that everybody's grabbed hold of, and every there's shows every week on this, and it's a board level decision now when business units are being formed in all of these major companies, and you're seeing companies like Schneider Electric just pivot entirely and say IoT is where our future is, and we are absolutely committed. We're building our own platforms, and it's fascinating how this has changed so rapidly. And then you look at things like connectivity and the change that's gone, because remember that companies like the LoRa Alliance and Sigfox weren't really around until about 2 years ago.
That's right.
And suddenly you have all of these additional choices that you can make. Whereas before it was very much you had one choice, and if you weren't going to use a cellular network, then you had to build your own network. And now you've got all these additional choices out there. So it's exciting times. It's moving very rapidly.
Has HP done step 2? So there's a couple steps. So like you said, there are a few companies that are all in. Schneider's one of them, and we had Prith on the podcast a little while ago. PTC is another one. I've interviewed their analytics folks. GE is another one. They're all in. We've had a couple of them on. I don't know if we had them on the podcast, but we definitely had them in videos and meetups. But, the second step is, first step, identifying IoT, bring it up to the board level. Second step, sometimes you're going to figure out how to do reorganization. But what's really interesting is third step. Third step, when you start becoming accountable to the street by drawing lines around your P&L in different ways and now calling it IoT, breaking it out. So has HP taken the step yet? Because I think it's going to happen if you haven't. But have you taken the step yet to reorganize the P&L to actually start showing the street your IoT revenue?
That has not been done yet, as far as I'm aware. But that's a little bit above my pay grade, as they would say in the as they'd say in the military. So I can't comment on that. But
But you know what I mean, though, right? Because now like Intel has done that, GE obviously has done that. A number of companies have done that where they've now just reorganized. And I think what the significance is, beyond it being potentially a parlor trick, and something to generate, to feed off of the hype, because let's figure, for the street, that's something that's interesting. But the counter side of that, and what I think is more interesting, is it does provide this accountability, or does force this accountability into this business. And so it really does show a level of seriousness. So I don't know if it's above your pay grade. I'm sure when they decide to do it, they're gonna talk to you. But I don't know. I'm guessing that HP will be, if you guys are really serious, I'm guessing this might be a next step for you guys.
Yeah, we continue to make announcement after announcement about our IoT offerings, and we had some big announcements 3 weeks ago at one of our events in Las Vegas called HPE Discover, where we announced the new Edgeline servers. We announced new functionality from the Aruba business, new analytics that would now run on the edge. Before that, where you and I met at IoT World, we announced the Universal IoT Platform. So we're doing announcement after announcement just to show how important this market is. But as for reporting back to the street, creating specific P&Ls around IoT, that I can't comment on. But we just do, we're just doing announcement after announcement after announcement. We're doing a lot of stuff around connected car, as well as smart cities. I mean, it's going everywhere. And the big announcements of our collaboration with companies like GE and Predix, and with National Instruments. I mean, there's just I mean, what I'd suggest is hit our website, but there's a lot of stuff on there, happening. So there's no doubt in my mind that HP is taking this very, very seriously indeed. And people like Prith, the Prith used to be at HP.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he used to run HP Labs, which
maybe that's right.
And which was a very high profile. It was a very important job because,
especially at HP.
Well, the groundwork that he laid, we're looking at now, which is a lot of the IoT stuff, was actually that foundation was laid when he was running HP Labs, and so
before he went to Accenture, then.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, let's dig into it. Let's start digging into the technology and a little bit about the business. But I'd like to first get your take. We're going to talk about IoT platforms today. It's always an important subject, and disclaimer: I always recommend to all my clients to use an IoT platform. It's plumbing. It's not unless plumbing is part of your core competency. It just, in my mind, doesn't make sense. Business models make sense. So I'd like to talk about IoT platforms today, and I'd like to talk specifically to start anyway with how to choose an IoT platform. So, Nigel, how about if you can take us through what you consider your top 5, I don't know, top 6, whatever it is, top 4 areas to consider when you're choosing an IoT platform?
The areas. It's different for different folks. However, What we do see is a common set of challenges when you roll out an IoT platform. Often you find that customers will start where they find a device, a very cool device. It could be something like a tracking device or a smart meter or something. And then there's an application that's hard-coded to that device. And it looks very easy, and it's relatively simple to roll out, and there's only one form of networking, and you do that, and away you go. And then the problems start happening when you have another device, and another device, and another device. And if they're all hard-coded to their own specific applications, then by the time you get to 10 devices with 10 applications, all hell breaks loose because you don't have a common data model. You can't perform analytics on on all of the data because it's in different formats. You've got different types of security, different management, all sorts of stuff. It's difficult and it's hard. So the first lesson that we share with most of our clients, no matter who you're dealing with, is first of all, have a data-centric platform that allows you to be able to gather the data in a consistent format and connect lots of devices to it, and it should support any type of connectivity. So it's the idea that says, I remember we were talking to a major car manufacturer, and car manufacturers have been doing connected cars for a while and these guys said to us, look, if anybody else comes and asks us or tells us they have another killer app, we're going to kill them. What we want is a killer platform. So I want a vendor that can allow me to have a platform that can connect any type of device over any type of network. And I want the data to be treated consistently so that I can then do what I want to do with that data, whether it's perform analytics or do data enrichment, whatever it happens to be, but give me a common data model. So that was the first big learning. I mean, it's we've been doing this for several years, and it's that idea to be able to build that common model.
So that's so let me just sort of jump in there. So what that means is what you're saying is to be able to, the scalability aside, which is obviously very important, but the ability to bring together different sources of data. You're saying the key then to look for in an IoT platform is to make sure that there's a common data model, or that you can produce a common data model to ingest all this different data, or what are you saying?
So when you ingest data from the device, and say you're connecting over MQ series or Kafka, whatever it happens to be, you need a layer in there that gathers the data off that device or switch that will transform that data into a standard model. Now, we've chosen one M2M, but whichever one you choose, choose a model so that you can then store the data consistently, you can perform analytics on it consistently, you can manage it, all of that.
Okay. So you're talking then kind of the application protocol then, I suppose. Is it the contextualization of the data, or is it the networking side? One M2M, I'm trying to remember. What does it cover?
It's not the networking side because
it's independent of that.
Exactly. Okay. It's saying we know there'll be tons of different networks, and we know there'll be tons of different protocols, and so so you'll have to support tons of them, and we support about 120 of them. I mean, but there's lots out there. But once you do that connection, then take the data and then transform it into a common data model so that you can then do whatever you want to do with it, whether it's analytics or data enrichment or embedding it in applications. But make sure that you have a consistent data model so that it all behaves the same way.
Okay. And again, just to break it down, I think what you're talking then about is an application level protocol that takes the data and contextualizes it in the same way, so that when you're comparing data from one source to another source, it's apples to apples, right?
Yes, and you can then perform analytics on it so much more easily.
Once you ingest it into the model that's within your application, within your application enablement platform, which I'm going to want to talk about. Okay, so that's number one. What else do we have for us?
The second one is connectivity.
Okay.
You've got to have a platform that allows you to connect lots of different types of protocols. So whether you're connecting over cellular or Wi-Fi or the long-range, low-power type WANs or personal network gateways from, you need to cover all of them. So make sure you don't get tied into one type of connectivity model. We find a lot of people, will only go down one route because that's all their provider sells them. And, that old adage of if you got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. It all depends on the use case. But from what we found, as you go and add more and more devices, those devices are going to be different. And they will require different types of networking. In fact, in things like connected car, you need to be able to have not only, the cellular connectivity, but you also need to have Wi-Fi. And the Wi-Fi not over cellular backhaul, but the ability to have Wi-Fi so that, you're connected in your home. If you're a Tesla and you're downloading updates to your car.
Maybe even at the gas station next time.
Exactly. So you need that multi-protocol support at the network side. Advice is never tie yourself into one type of connectivity. Make sure that you have a platform that's open that allows you to pick and choose the right connection for the right device.
So at the media layer, and that's the connectivity, cellular, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, you're saying just make sure the platform is supports. We said two things about protocols so far. We said make sure it supports a common application level protocol to contextualize the data, put it in a common data model. And now what you're saying is make sure that it supports, or you're not limited by the media protocols, and that is, again, whatever type of radio, I guess it kind of comes down to, that you need for your particular application.
Exactly. Because you think about connectivity required in remote sites could be satellite.
That's right.
And sensors in the road, you want something that is very unchatty, so to be able to maintain the battery life of that sort of device. So there's local Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and you need it all. So never get tied into that stuff.
Okay, all right. What else you got for us?
Third thing, just an observation, is that data that you pull off your things, that data needs to be horizontal. And let me give you an example. So a connected car. Now, a connected car by itself has a whole bunch of data that needs to be gathered in. But a connected car, just the nature of it means it's moving. So it's moving through smart cities. It's moving to your home. It's moving on roads which have other sensors on them. It's going to be exposed to weather. So the idea is that your data flow should be horizontal. In other words, your connected car should be able to talk to smart cities so that you can figure out smart parking and smart lighting and all the rest of it. And it should be able to figure out when it gets home so that it can turn on its Wi-Fi connections and get over-the-air upgrades. And you should be able to talk to other vehicles for information that's passed between them. Some people call it swarm computing, but I remember explaining this to my wife, who was saying, well, Waze does that. Waze is swarm computing by people. And on the one hand, she's right. But on the other hand, sensors on vehicles are a little more sophisticated than Joe Blow noticing a policeman standing on the side of the road and entering that into his Waze. This is the information that's coming off the car that is, able to tell you if there's black ice on the road, and you as a driver wouldn't even know, but your suspension and the level of grip of the car knows that, and so that's useful information to pass on to other drivers. So it's this concept of having horizontal information flows, is something important, because as you go on this journey, if you're a large enterprise, you're going to be involved in lots of different spaces, and you need to make sure that the data flow is not just horizontal, but it's vertical. Not just vertical, but horizontal as well.
So let me understand this a bit more, Nigel. So when you're using your example of the automobile going through the smart city, or even talking to each other, what does it mean? What am I going to be looking for from a feature point of view on a data sheet beyond protocol compatibility? So is there something beyond just using the same communication protocols? And we've talked about 2 of the 3 so far. Or is there something different that someone's should be looking for? I just want to make sure we put this in context so people understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's to do with the concept that if we digitize everything, then everything has to talk to each other. Right. And to do that, you need to be able to exchange data. And it's built on this 2 core tenets, one of standardized data and 2 of multi-protocol connectivity. Okay. And so this is really a reinforcement of the data piece, which is the data is going to be used all over the place. Now, therefore, put it in a format that everybody can use.
Yes. Okay. No, I'm liking it now. And now, actually, I'm kind of coming around to the 1M to M. So just for our listeners, there's 3 levels of protocols. We've got the media protocols that we've talked about, and that is communicating what radios you're going to be using. And so sometimes Bluetooth, sometimes Wi-Fi, sometimes cellular, LPWA, whatever the case. Then we talk networking protocols, and on the IT side, generally IP, Internet Protocol. But on the OT side, that's when, as Nigel was saying, they support many of the different CAN bus, Profibus, all the rest of those. Then we've got the application protocol, and that's to put contextual information with the data, so when you take it. And where M2M is, and what you're talking about here, is kind of a 4th layer. And this is an information protocol in the sense of it's not necessarily put into protocol form, but per industry or per different segments. And this is coming out. We're starting to see it in One Connect, or in the manufacturing industry. And now what you're saying is 1M to M is having an information structure that says this is the structure of the data that you need to save. And if everybody saves that type of data in that type of structure, and then it's attached using the application protocol, then we'll be able to talk to each other. I think I'm just parroting it back to you to make sure I understand it, but I think that's what you're saying, right? Is using a common data structure beyond just the protocols, but information structure, so that everyone's kind of playing in the same area.
I couldn't have put it better myself, actually. In fact, I think I'll listen to the to the recording. Yeah. No, but
good.
Perfectly understood.
That makes sense. So that makes sense, and we're starting to see that now. And I'll put a link to 1M to M in the show notes. But we're starting to see this 4th layer of information structure coming out on an industry by industry basis. And so listeners can click on 1M to M, see what that's all about. And then MT Connect is actually the other one I was thinking about. That's in for discrete manufacturing. Whereas again, it's like this information structure. Good. No, that makes a lot of sense then. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Are there any others?
One other area I'll drill into is partners. Yes. Nobody can provide everything, so we all know that. Now, when you add new devices, you probably want to look for somebody that's maybe tested that device on their platform, because the dream is to have a platform that can connect any type of device. Now, you want somebody who provides that platform to at least have tested the devices so that you as a client are not left holding the bag to do the testing and then try and sort out any issues. So that partner program is useful in 2 ways. One is making sure that all of the devices that you want are pre-tested and integrated by the vendor. But the second is those partnerships, they create innovation. And so some of the things, for example, that we do is we partner with companies like AIV that are a very big component provider in the automotive space. They make head-end units and stuff. So we do hackathons with them, and we then present the results to a series of car manufacturers that then look at the type of use cases that we come up with. And it's the idea, hackathons are becoming more and more popular because it's a very simple way and a very cost-effective way to drive innovation, to drive new use cases, to drive, stuff you wouldn't have expected. Because And sometimes the bigger the company, the harder it is to innovate because you have all this legacy and installed base.
Absolutely.
So the ability to have to work with a company that has a strong partnership program that will take care of the integration and testing for you to reduce your pain, and also one that figures out how to work with different partners to be able to create innovation. I mean, my personal view is that there will be a consolidation in the industry on the infrastructure side, so the enablement platform, that type of thing. There will be unbelievable innovation on the device side, and it's also on the connectivity side. And the reason I say that is that it's heavy lift. There's more than 300 IoT platforms out there.
That's right.
But as IoT becomes more complex as it rolls out, it'll take more and more heavy lifting, and fewer companies will have the resources to be able to manage that heavy lifting on the platform side. But and this gets back to the point that you so eloquently put. If you have common data models, common ways of dealing with connectivity, then that allows innovation to really happen on the device side, which is, in my view, that's what the client sees, and that's what they tend to buy is the device. And the companies with stronger investments will take care of the back end.
Yeah. No, I like where you're going with this, and I agree. I agree on the platform side, the heavy lifting. Again, and I'm just repeating myself, but if that's not going to be a core competency of your company, you don't need to do that. You can rent that. You can lease that. But what you're bringing up, Nigel, is an important point, and I'm going to just frame it slightly differently, and that's the ecosystem. Right? An ecosystem is going to be the bringing together of the technology providers and the buyers. It's like an ecosystem to monetize it and to monetize the platform. And so I think what you're saying is to, when choosing a platform, maybe see if there's an ecosystem associated with it, which is the kind of the business counterpart, to the technical, platform, and that's going to make life good. Is at a very high level, right? So we're talking ecosystems, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's really interesting because the use cases are now starting to evolve so rapidly. The things like smart parking has been around a while, but we're seeing a ton of interest in track and trace around personal safety, and again, it depends on which region you're in. So in certain regions, track and trace is absolutely critical for them, and we're seeing, for example, in India, the government is investing heavily in smart cities and putting a lot of money into it. It reminds me of the days back about 4 or 5 years ago when the US government put a lot of money into M2M for smart meters. Now that's being done at a much bigger scale in India, and it's each city is choosing its own 5 to 10 top use cases and starting to roll them out. So
for what again? For what are they doing exactly?
Yeah, for smart cities. I mean,
for smart cities.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, okay. And they're selecting 5 to 10 use cases within smart cities. It ranges from smart parking, smart lighting, all the usual suspects, but unique to India. I don't know if you've ever driven there.
Yeah, I've been driven there. Yes.
So you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking
They have
about.
a few challenges on traffic. So so it's being able to use technology to be able to manage that. Now, you and I both know that if you've been there, then putting laws in place or rules in place is one thing. Having them enforced is quite another.
That's right.
But trying to use technology to be able to drive slowly but surely a change of behavior in the behavior of traffic is the dream anyway.
Yeah. Okay. And so this kind of applies to the ecosystem in the sense that specifically when you're talking about smart cities, this is going to be pretty encompassing in those 5 use cases that you're talking about. Be sure nice if they talk together, right? And so this would mean, this is where both the technical and the business, the platform and the ecosystem come together and work together.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. No, I like that. Let's talk about value now and value generation. So my perspective is that all value, comes from from information in IoT. It comes from transforming the data into something that's useful. And where that's happening is going to be in the application. It's going to be happening in the analytics, and kind of between the two of them is the modeling. So I'd like to talk specifically about, and I think your platform there's different types of platforms. We've talked about Jasper already, which is more of a connectivity platform, but I think yours is a little beyond that, isn't it? It's more of an application enablement platform. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. In fact, little known fact, but HP worked very closely with Jasper to be able to build their platform, and so a lot of their platform runs on HP's technology. But our platform is an enablement platform, so very much, as you said, it's that drive to value.
So let's talk about that a little bit more, and what I want to talk about and get your perspective on is tell me about the application development environment. What should people be looking for? What is it? Maybe define it, and then what should people be looking for? Again, under the thought of when you're making a choice between different platforms, if you agree that value creation is pretty important, and it's done. One of the areas where it's done is in the application. Then it stands to reason that the application development environment is very important. So what should people be considering when looking at application enablement platforms, or I should say the application development environment within the application enablement platform?
So what our view on this is that you're getting data from different devices, and sometimes they have a value all in themselves and they link to the application, and that's great. But often, and particularly when you start moving into the OT world, you're getting a lot of data from lots of different type of devices. And so the real value is being able to tie the data from one to the other. So a simple example is your airbag on your car goes off. So that's an event. And that's a piece of data. Now you want to make that data contextual. So how do you put that into what speed the car was going? What are the road conditions? What's the weather? What was the traffic pattern? What was the condition of the road? So all of this stuff then suddenly makes that one piece of data incredibly valuable because you've contextualized it. So you need to have a platform that allows you to be able to build context, so do integration on a massive scale with different types of data sources. And what we found particularly with connected car in the auto industry was that the build out of these microservices is your drive to value for the end user, because the end user, again, we just show simple examples of this, such as you're driving from...
Oh, which microservices are you referring to? Sorry.
Yeah, well, an example would be you're driving from Germany and you're about to cross into the border from Austria. So you're using geofencing, and you're using a knowledge database that says that, hey, but the traffic laws in Austria, what's the difference between the traffic laws in Austria versus Germany? So the difference is, you need to drive with your headlights on in Austria all the time. And so a message pops up on the screen of your car when you're a couple of miles before the border saying you're about to enter Austria. The law is that your headlights have to be on. Do you want to turn them on? And so it's just a very, very simple use case of being able to show how you'd build a set of microservices like that. Or another one might be you're driving in your car and the car ahead senses rain, and it's two or three miles ahead of you. Your car is communicating with other cars, and your car also knows that your sunroof is open and your windows are down, because where you are, it's not raining. And so it's smart enough to say, 3 miles ahead, heavy rain, your sunroof's open and your windows are down. Do you want to close them? And it's this type of stuff that the end user derives value from, because for them, that's valuable information. So it's all the perception of what value is, and we work, from car companies doing fairly simple, demonstration use cases like that to show microservices, through to telcos that are building out quite complex microservices because they have so much information if somebody is using a cellular device.
Right.
They know everything about that device because they have all of the all the
back end data,
all the back end data tied up in their HLRs, and they know exactly what's happening. So they're able to really provide very rich data, and things like geofencing, particularly for track and trace down to very accurate levels, is incredibly valuable.
So what you're saying then is, to be able to develop these microservices, within your IoT product, whether it's for the automotive industry or some other one, you're going to need a pretty robust application development environment. Right?
Exactly.
And so what are we looking for? I mean, is this something that ties into an existing development environment? Is it a development environment that's within the platform itself? Maybe just talk a little bit, maybe just lift the hood a little bit and talk a little bit more as to, again, I'm looking to buy a system. I want to buy a platform. Application development is really important to me because I want to be able to do all these microservices. I want to put microservices to create this extra value, which I agree.
Right.
What am I looking for? What's the differences?
So you're looking for something that enables you to be able to do something fairly simply yourself.
Okay.
Because often you'll find an environment that is very complex, and every time you want to add something or build something, you'll need to call a systems integrator in, and it gets expensive in a hurry.
It does.
So you want to be able to have an environment that your own guys can do this simply and easily. You're going to need back-end help on some of the more complex structures, but for simple onboarding of devices and data enrichment, you want to do that yourself. So you've got to make sure that the platform provides that in a really simple way for you to be able to do that type of data enrichment and microservices. So look for simplicity and the tools that allow you to do that. Oh, and by the way, our tools are great and really simple. Just thought I'd mention that.
No, really? All right, listen, you triggered something in my mind. So we're adding these different services, and that makes sense. Now we want to charge for them. And so what are the business models that you're finding today associated with the IoT platforms? Maybe just sort of walk us through some of the business models, because I think that's important too when looking and choosing a platform. What's it going to cost me? How is it charging me? Maybe take us through that a little bit.
Sure. When people are starting out, when companies are starting out, they tend to want to have an as-a-service model because they don't know how big this is going to scale. So they want to be able to have somebody else host the infrastructure. As you said before, it's not a core competency, so have it hosted by somebody and then consume it on a cost-per-device type thing.
Okay.
And the price points that you should be able to get should be around 10 cents a device a year. That's the sort of price point you want to look for.
And is that in the telematics industry, or is that you're saying pretty broadly?
That should be pretty broadly, actually.
Okay. All right. 10 cents per year. All right. And so you're saying that'll be a charge that the platform would charge you, or what?
Well,
okay.
If for example you were buying it from us, then we would charge you, sort of depending on the scale, that type of thing. But roughly 10 cents per device per year would give you the enablement platform being hosted as a service.
And that's it? That's the only cost?
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't matter how much data, for example, you store in your cloud. It doesn't matter how much computation that you're doing on it. It's all your business model, this sounds pretty good. It's just on a device. It's on simply a device basis.
Yeah, this is on how we enable a device, so the enablement platform. Now, often people will have their own ideas on analytics and where they want to store things. For us to store that data, it's pretty simple. But sometimes companies, particularly larger enterprises, already have an analytics strategy in place, and they've selected whether they've selected HP Enterprise or whether they've selected SAP with HANA or Microsoft with Cortana. So the 10 cents per device per year is for us to do the enablement of that and present it through to the analytics and whatever else you wanted to do.
Okay.
And what we found is that many companies will start off that way while they figure out whether if they're selling this as a service, for example, like a telco, and you're going after consumers. Often you don't, you can model things as much as you want, but you really don't know if a service will take off or not. So you want to kind of try it and see.
Yeah.
And then once it starts scaling out, you then reach another decision point, which is, do I continue this as a service, or do I think now that this is so strategic to my business, and I know that there's a crossover point about 3 years down the road that means that I'll then start paying more as a service than I would have paid if I'd bought it. Do I invest now in it as capital, or do I continue just with a pure OPEX model? And it depends on the appetite and the cash flow and the depth of the pockets of the organization that's actually dealing with it. So operators, for example, for them, some of them, this is absolutely strategic. They want it in-house, and they will experiment with it as a service. Once it starts taking off, then they'll move it in-house. Some enterprises, they have no intention of ever doing any of this whatsoever, so they'll always continue as a service. So it just depends on their level of competency, as to how far they drive on this. So, I think Prith would tell you from Schneider, that for them it's absolutely strategic, and that's something that they do in-house, whereas other companies would say, for us it is strategic, but we don't want to provide that competency in-house. We just don't have the skills, so we'll have it as a service.
Now, just to clarify, Nigel, when you say buy it, are you talking about licensing it, kind of like you would some software, so you still have support, it's still updated? Are you saying to actually get the source code and dig into it and own it?
Yep, you would buy it just as you would any software.
Okay, so it's licensing it. You're not necessarily then owning the source code. It's more, again, you're licensing the platform for kind of like what you used to do. I mean, you just buy a one-time fee, and then maybe you have a 10% or 15% or 20% per year support fee that gives you updates and support and so forth. I just want to clarify.
Yes, exactly. That's just buying as a standard software platform, because that's what it is.
Yeah, no, that's what it is. And people talk about as platforms, but let's just call it what it is. It's middleware. It's a bunch of software, and as we've identified, it's talking protocols, it's talking APIs, and it is in the middle, between your devices and the value generating components of it. Now, you did mention something I did want to talk about that kind of keys off of this, and that's APIs. Yeah, so if you have your own analytics platform that you're using today, can't get away from that word, platform, how are you interfacing it with platform? You can see, right? So I guess where I'm going with this is what should our audience be considering if they have already an analytics solution and they want to marry it, they want to connect it, they want to interface it with their platform? What should they be looking at in the speeds and feeds when making the buying decision, leasing decision on a platform? Do all platforms support all analytics through their APIs, or is there anything that we should be thinking about in particular here?
I can speak for our platform, and that's why we went down the route of a common data model, because we knew that we would have to feed multiple analytics engines.
Yes.
So that's why we went down the 1M2M standard.
Okay.
And so when a buyer looks at an IoT platform, you need to make sure it's open, so that the data is accessible from so that any analytics engine can do its job. We made our choices, and but at least the platforms I've seen, if it's too closely tied to its own analytics engine, then you tend to run into issues. I mean,
I agree. You're going to run out unless they're an analytics company, and you don't want that. You want to have lots of headroom there. And I think you bring a good point. Make sure it's open. And the other point that you're bringing up is one thing just to be able to connect up to an analytics package with an API, but it's another thing to be using a data model that shortens there's the ETL stage, right, in analytics, extract, transform, and load.
Right.
But that's huge. And so if you can actually have a very nicely structured model, and again, what we're talking about is kind of like that fourth layer protocol, it really does make that communication easier, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And by the way, that just triggered another thought, because that ETL layer, when you're starting off, the ETL layer, you just assume that it's going to scale. In most of our experiences, it doesn't. So, to be honest, our best clients, the ones that are, ones that are very keen to move on this are the ones that have been doing this for a year or two, have scaled out, and then run into issues. So that scalability of the ETL layer, literally you have to be dealing with billions of transactions a day. So just make sure you buy a platform that's actually done that before, rather than you being the test case.
Right. So getting into the scalability issues is what you're talking about then.
But it's kind of scary because we started off with this wonderful marketing term of IoT and how it had been embraced. And before you know it, we're talking about the illities, scalability, and blah, blah, blah. And then we're talking about platforms, we're talking about middleware. So anyway, back to IoT.
All right, Nigel, I've enjoyed it. Where can our audience find out more about you and find out more about what HPE is doing in IoT?
So the easiest thing is for you just to Google HPE and IoT, and that will take you straight to the website. Or you can go on hpe.com/IoT. But quite frankly, Googling it is by far the easiest way, and you will find us right there.
Well, I'll put the URL in the show notes, the show analysis notes for people that may forget that. But HPE, just remind me. I know HPE. Well, I know a little bit that HP did a bit of a bifurcation in the sense they've got is that why it's now HPE? There's HP Enterprise and there's HP everything else, or what is that?
So when HP split in November last year, November 1, the enterprise business, so that's all the servers, the networking, storage, the software security services, that stayed in HP Enterprise, and the consumer side, the print side and the PC side went with HP Inc.
Okay. So there's an Inc. now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So HP Inc. and HP Enterprise.
Got it. All right. And we'll also, unless you know it off the top of your head, I'll also get your Twitter, feed and put that in the show analysis notes. Wonderful. So with that, thanks, Nigel. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed the time.
Yeah. Thanks, Bruce. Likewise.
Okay. That was a good talk with Nigel Upton. This podcast goes vertical, deep diving into different topics each week. If you prefer a more horizontal and structured approach to learning IoT business and its orbiting technologies, check out my book IoT Inc., published by McGraw-Hill, or become a certified IoT professional by completing the ICIP training and certification program. For details, just go to www.iot-inc.com. Also go to www.iot-inc.com for an analysis of this episode, links to things that were mentioned during the episode, and very importantly, the episode's PDF transcript. Just search for the name of the episode or the guest. If you're new to this podcast, subscribe. That way you'll get every week's episode delivered straight to your device. Or, if you've been listening for a while, there are 3 ways you can support the show. You can leave a rating or a review on iTunes. Just go to iot-inc.com/iTunes. It only takes 1 click to leave a rating, a little bit longer to leave a review. You can share it on social. I'm on LinkedIn, to a lesser extent on Twitter. And of course, you can support the show by buying my book, IoT Inc., or the ICIP training and certification program. It's how I pay the bills. Next week's episode is Open Source IoT Platforms, ready for prime time? With Hans Scharler. I hope you can join me then. I'm your host, Bruce Sinclair. Thank you for listening. Until next week, may your path to IoT business be a horizontal one.
You have been listening to the IoT Inc. Business Show.